This video is made possible by Practical Defense Systems, the best online security training at the lowest prices. You can start your security career today online at pdsclasses.com. Check them out. Hi, I'm Joel Persinger. I'm the Gun Guy. Thank you very much for all of your support of GunGuyTV. I'm extremely grateful. Make sure you check us out on all of these alternative places as well, because sometimes YouTube bans videos or deletes them or whatever, and you're going to want to check those out. You might also check out the GunGuyTV audio podcast. It comes out on the 5th and the 20th generally, unless I get lazy and forget one, which happens once in a while, but you will find it on your favorite podcast player. All right, I'm going to have an interview today with Rick Travis from the California Rifle and Pistol Association, who's getting ready to join me. We're going to talk about a great many things nationally. We'll be talking about a number of national issues you're sure to want to know the answers to, and then we'll talk about some state stuff as well. So let's get right into the interview with Rick. So Rick, let's talk about court packing. What are your thoughts just off the top of your head?
No, negative, zero, should never be done.
No.
No, I mean, this is just going to end up, if this was to happen, and I know Franklin Delano Roosevelt attempted it back in the 30s. He used the threat of it as a bludgeon to try to influence the court, intimidate the high court. I think there's a lot of arguments could be made that was a gross abuse of executive power and privilege over the Supreme Court. There's to be a separation between the three branches of government. We elect two of those branches, one we don't. It's supposed to be beyond that. And I think both parties have been guilty from time to time of trying to manipulate that and make it more political than it's supposed to be. I think we've seen a lot of the judges on the court be very political in their statements. And we need to keep it to the current level it's at, because, I mean, think about right now, Biden could come in and potentially, we have a 6-point lead, so he could say, well, I'm going to add another, 4, so then it would be 7-6. And then, who knows, 3 years down the road, a new president comes in and goes, I don't like that. So, I'm going to add another 8 to make it overwhelming the other way. And next thing you know, you're going to be like some countries that have high courts with, dozens and dozens and dozens of people, and then you're never going to get anything done. Because I can tell you, here in California, when we move to one of these en banc panels and go through all this rigmarole, and I think that's part of what I'm seeing nationally is, Joel, we have people in politics like the governor here in California who, will have a lower court here in the federal system say, yeah, no, you can't do that. You were wrong. And, you and I in general, if we get told, yeah, okay, nice try, guys, but no, we quit. But no, he appeals it, which they have the right to do. We appeal it sometimes, and it goes to the Ninth Circuit. And in the Ninth Circuit, phenomenally will say, at least half the time, no, Governor, you're wrong. Now, arguably at that point, you and I are stopping. If we get it handed to us in the Ninth Circuit, we're kind of like, well, the last stop's the Supreme Court, and I just don't have the money for it. And you stop, and you accept what the outcome is. But the state doesn't have to pay. And so then what does the state do? Oh, we don't like what those 3 judges came up with, so now we want this 11-judge en banc panel because maybe we can manipulate the numbers. And that's where the tie-in is to the court packing. Californians should be really wise to this, because our governor and our attorney generals have been doing this for over a decade.
But then within the court, I mean, people say the court's not supposed to be political, but come on, it is.
Right. And it's political to the extent of, even when Justice Scalia, God rest his soul, was in there were cases that he didn't vote for because he knew if he did, there was a good chance it would go the opposite direction for where he thought the law should go. And so it was better not to hear it and to kick it back down. So it was only a regional issue instead of a new national-wide law and understanding. And so this is purely, Biden and some others trying to pack the court so they can use it. But for Biden, it's a win-win politically, because even if he doesn't get his court packing done, the threat of it could be enough to make a judge that was in the middle say, you know what? No, I want to keep the court. I want to preserve the court the way it is. So I'm not going to look at these kinds of cases, or I'm not going to vote that way. And that's exactly what Franklin Delano Roosevelt did. And to me, it's an abuse of power.
But you said it takes 4 justices to decide to take a case. But of course, that number will change if they add 4 justices. Right. Mm-hmm. And the more justices that they add that favor their position, the more likely is they're going to take cases because they're going to outvote the justices that wouldn't right. take that case. And then they have even a stronger chance of actually winning that case because they've added justices that favor their position. So it really just becomes, it's not really court anymore. It's just a rubber stamp.
The other issue is the more justices, the more personalities you have to balance when presenting a case. And, you know, a lot of people have never, ever taken the time to sit and watch a Supreme Court look at any kind of a particular case from start to finish, as these lawyers who basically live at the Supreme Court and work on behalf of other groups to talk to these justices. There are some questions that sometimes you're like, whoa, I didn't even think about that. And you can tell they're playing politics, as you said, because they don't want to come off as they're anti this or pro that. They're like, oh, there's this technicality right there. And you guys never answered that. And I'm going to not vote for this because that's where I'm going to hang my hat. You know, Paul Clement is to me one of the biggest rock stars in the Supreme Court, has handled most of the major cases over the last 25 years. But, you know, Mr. Clement knows those justices are in front of him. But now if you start to double that number, let's just say we go to a court of 19, that's twice the workload, because now they have to be thinking, well, what are those justices' backgrounds and what are their little things that they want to see? And it gets broader and broader. And you basically are going to make it so people won't be able to even go to the Supreme Court, because it literally costs hundreds of thousands, if not $1 million, to be there.
Okay, so what do you think are the odds of court packing actually happening? Are they going to be able to get away with this? And what can we do to fight them, to keep them from doing it?
Number one, I don't think they're going to, I mean, personally, where we sit today on, the 19th of April, I don't see it happening. But that could change, because a lot of things I have said that I didn't think would happen have happened, or a form of it has. So, I mean, it's possible. I don't think it's probable. And the reason I don't think it's probable is I think we have enough members of the Senate and Congress that don't believe in it. And we have enough members that are somewhat vulnerable. And I know a lot of people have been doom and gloom, but the hold on the House is not as strong as the Dems try to portray it. And if you look at some of Nancy Pelosi, who's one of the craziest members in Congress to come from California, but even she has said several times, I'm not bringing that up, not doing it, because there's too many people in her own state that are vulnerable. And there's a lot of people in the center middle, not the far left progressives, but the center middle, that are wary of this idea. So I don't think they have the public to back them. And they're coming up on a critical election year that frankly starts in about a month and a half. And I don't think people want that out there.
How does that actually work? I mean, we've got the campaign, we've got the primaries, and then the election. At what point do these people start worrying about what might happen to them if they vote the wrong way?
They're already starting to worry. I mean, the fact is, Congress, just like the Assembly here in California, you get about 60 days after the election to kind of relax, lick your wounds, so to speak, and then the campaign restarts. And that's why you usually see their campaign manager never quits being the campaign manager in those political seats, because it just starts up. You also have to realize that during every 2 years, there's a third of the Senate, both in the state and in the federal level, that is being reelected. So there's this constant churn that is happening. And you got to realize anything you do right now, especially starting in June, because starting in June, you start seeing all the politicians. You start to see it actually in April. They're going out and they're having luncheons. They're meeting with different people. They're ramping up. And so the first part is secure the core of the base, and then move out from there into the community. And the attacks happen, controversially in the other direction. So we're already working, especially coming out of COVID, at our local chapters and everything, getting different politicians up there, so people start to know them, start to have name recognition, can talk to them, build relationships. And it's with those relationships that we can influence things in the future.
I see a lot of the national things that are beating them, that they're being beaten over the head and shoulders about. One obviously is the border, which is a nightmare, and whether you like him or don't.
But that's not a big issue, Joel. That's not a big issue because our vice president's never been there.
Yeah, okay, and we've dealt with her in California for years. She's an empty suit. So you've got an empty suit in one case, and you've got a dementia patient in the other.
Right.
And he is arguably the cause of the border problem, because the border problem didn't exist until Biden sat down and started signing orders that people gave him. And the next thing you know, we have a border problem. So they're getting beaten over the head with that. They're getting beaten about the head and shoulders by the Republicans over the idea of court packing. They're getting beaten about the head and shoulders over their desire to give Washington D.C. statehood, which is a whole different issue. And how much of this stuff is really going to end up hurting them, do you suspect, in the next election?
I think some of it, well, I mean, part of it is, as Americans, we tend to get, we adapt to noise. I think that's the best way to put it. And politics has gotten very, very combative, much more, you know, I like it. We used to have the California idea of politics. Yeah, we might flex our fist a little bit, flex our muscles a little bit, bump into each other a little bit. But there would be other Californians at a certain point that would say, come on, Rick, Joel, let's talk this out. You go back to my friends in places like New Jersey, New York, and it is like toe-to-toe, Billy Martin, you know, from the old days with the Yankees, spitting at the ump, you know, face to face. And, you know, that's where politics are. That's where the Dems are. That's where Republicans are. And it's like whoever spits the loudest, tweets the most, and yells the most supposedly will win. But I think there's a great deal of fatigue starting to happen amongst Americans where we're like, that's not who we are. And I think the Dems have made some gross overreaches. They didn't learn. You know, I look back to when Bill Clinton first became president, and obviously his wife Hillary at that time wanted to redesign America's thoughts on the role of the First Lady, which she was not the first lady for trying to do that. And I'm not going to put her down for, well, I disagreed with her. I'm not going to put her down for attempting, because, you know, we had Republicans and Democratic first ladies that tried to redefine that role. But she overreached. And when she overreached, Americans turned on her. They said, enough's enough. You know, and that was even a concern when, you know, one of the most beloved first ladies, Jacqueline Kennedy, started to redesign the White House. There were a lot of people, and Americans finally said, enough. Like, we get you're trying to up it, but there's a plateau. And I think they've exceeded that plateau. They've overreached, and I think Americans are going to push back. And I kind of agree with former House Speaker Newt Gingrich. I think that 22, there's going to be a referendum that comes out, just like there was on Bill Clinton's first term.
I think these folks know that they're going to have a horrible loss this next election, potentially. And this is the reason for wanting to give Washington, D.C. statehood, because that adds 2 more left-leaning senators to the mix, which gives them an advantage. So it seems to me that in every conceivable way, they're trying to hold on to power desperately. It's almost as if, and this is where it might be positive, which is going to sound strange. But these do strike me as the death throes of liberalism. They really do. It's as if, you know, the lion that fights the hardest is the old one who knows he's going down, but he's going down with a fight. And I suspect that this is the death throes of liberalism in a lot of ways. I think it's the death throes of globalism in a lot of ways. We just have to succeed and not give up and continue to fight the fight. With that in mind, you and I have talked about local versus national, and there was an article that came out in The Truth About Guns that I sent you this morning. I was fascinated by, and unfortunately I can't throw up the graphic, but I'll see if I can do it in post-production. Focusing gun owners' political strength, all PACs are local. There it is right there.
Thomas Tippo O'Neill, who had been Speaker of the House during the Reagan administration, wrote a book back in the day called All Politics Are Local. And one of the stories he talks about is how he had forgotten when he was inside the nation's capital as a speaker that they were local, until he went back and talked to somebody and said, why the heck aren't you voting for me? And it was a long drawn out story, but the basis of it was, you forgot you work in this state. You don't work up there. And he said, that is the most salient point that anybody has to realize. It's local. And I tell people all the time, you give money to different politicians. I know a popular one right now, and I like him too, follow him, is, Dan Crenshaw out of Texas. But it pains me when I watch, the community here in California give the man $250,000, $500,000, because that does nothing for California at the end of the day. And I've had people argue, but Rick, he could vote this way. He's already going to vote that way. Whether you give him $5, $50, $5,000, there's some legal issues. He can't influence anything in California. But there are many, many races from the assembly to the state senate here in California, as well as congressional races, that money could have made the difference in the election and given us somebody that was pro 2A versus helping to celebrate somebody from another state. And you got to realize there's a lot of those politicians that come to California and are turning the circuit right now, which goes back to what I said earlier about the elections already started, because Crenshaw's on that every 2 years mode, just like any other person in Congress. And he's been in California like 4 times this year raising money. But that's money that, if you were looking at the tactics of winning California, should stay in California and fight for California.
So one of the issues with local versus national is the fact that Rick and his organization are going to be able to affect my representatives in the local area where I live, in a state, and they do it on a state level. And I think about that. They do it on a state level, but I don't think about them doing it on a federal level, but they do. And more so than a national organization is going to do. Yeah, sure. The Second Amendment Foundation files a lot of lawsuits around the nation, but so does CRPA, by the way. But the Second Amendment Foundation, as much as I love Alan Gottlieb, is not going to go down the street and talk to my House member from the United States House of Representatives and try to replace her if she's anti-2A, which, by the way, she is, or try to replace my state senator in case that individual happens to be anti-2A, which, by the way, is the case. So I don't have any representation personally that's pro-2A on a national level out of California. If I give my money to a national organization, that's not going to help me in that regard. And if I give it to Dan Crenshaw in Texas, it certainly doesn't help me in that regard. I'm far better off helping my state organization fight for me in my state, so that not only on a state basis I have representation, but also on a federal basis. Am I getting this? This is an eye-opener for me. Am I getting this right?
Yeah, so a couple things I'm going to talk about. First, I'll talk about our national organizations, and I'll talk about CRPA as a state organization. So on a national level, when we give money, and I'm an NRA benefactor, life member, and I give money to the NRA, I give it understanding 2 things. One, that an NRA or a Gun Owners of America or Second Amendment, their first responsibility with that money is to secure positions they already have in Congress and in the Senate, meaning that if they're backing Dan Crenshaw out of Texas, if they're backing, one of our U.S. senators that they find it is pro 2A, and that in any way, shape, or form, there's a contest there where they could lose that seat, or there's some vulnerability like there was with McConnell, their money is going to go there. Their resources are going to be there to secure those positions and not lose them. And then with what they have left over, they're going to pick and choose. And unfortunately, California is not the pick and choose state. They're trying to get blocks in other states, and we haven't been that. So then it comes back to California. And unfortunately, most Californians do exactly what you said at the beginning of this. They're thinking, well, I'll give to one of the national groups to take care of the senators and the representatives that go back to the federal level. But California, CRPA, the only thing they focus on is the state assembly and state senate. They don't care about local politics. They don't care about anything like that. And they don't care about the national level. And that's a lie. We get involved in city races. We get involved in critical city races. We got involved in one of them here in Orange County and got the former MMA champion Tito Ortiz elected, who is pushing back on a lot of the liberal politics that started coming to Huntington Beach to try to turn it around. We get involved in pivotal congressional campaigns up and down the state and are trying to overturn those. And we had a couple of victories, we had some losses, but that's what we're doing. The frustrating part for us is, like we said earlier in the show, when our own Californians are giving money to other, quote, well, I call them political celebrities from other states that have absolutely zero impact on what's going on in California, when a portion, if not all that money, could have influenced sometimes 3 or 4 elections the other direction. And we wouldn't be having this debate.
Well, this happens with guys like Dan Crenshaw, doesn't it?
Right.
Or because he's got name recognition,
Mm-hmm.
and because people appreciate him and he seems to be on our side in a lot of respects, they'll give money to him.
Don't get me wrong. I like Dan Crenshaw, great guy, but giving money to Dan Crenshaw, he doesn't have accountability to California.
Well, it doesn't help you in Arkansas either,
right?
Or for that matter, in Nevada or in Washington or in Oregon. It doesn't help you in any of those states because that dude represents people in Texas. And by the way, if I give money to Dan Crenshaw, I live in California, and I call Dan Crenshaw's office and I say, I'm upset about so-and-so, what's the first question that his representative, that his staff is going to ask me?
Where are you from?
And when I say I'm from California, what are they going to do?
Click.
Yeah, because I'm not one of his constituents.
Right.
So not only do I not have any representation for myself in California among my own representatives, but I don't have any in Texas either. And so if I contact some superstar politician from Texas or wherever, they're not interested in what I got to say because they're not interested. They're not going to get my vote.
And this is one of the reasons we have our CRPA chapters throughout the state. And we're adding on right now a schedule about 2 to 3 every month. And the reason we're doing that is because we bring these local politicians, be it a congressional candidate or a sitting congressman. We bring, the state senators, assembly people. But here's other things we bring: sheriffs, the constitutional officers that actually say yes or no to enforcing these laws. And we got to see how important that was during this last year of COVID-19 restrictions, where several of these sheriffs said, no, you've exceeded your reach, we're not doing that. Judges, how many people ever actually research what a judge is instead of just throwing a dart when they go into the voting booth? But we're the only group in the state, along with Sam Paredes, because we do it jointly together, Gun Owners of California, that put out a judges list of these are judges you should be voting for, i.e., if they're not on the list, don't vote for them.
Well, who knows your local politicians better? The national organization or the state organization that deals with them day in and day out and sees everything they do? The national organization is looking at 50 states and how many 400 and some odd House members and 100 senators and all this other stuff. The local yokel, I just called you a local yokel, they know what's going on locally.
Right. Well, we watch people's votes from, like this morning we have in West Hollywood a group of people that are getting ready to vote in another safe gun restriction thing, and we're fighting it. But we also know all the members of the city council. We know the people backing them. We know where they stand on these issues. And that's going to come up in the elections because we're going to bring it up. That's what we do. And so that's why we're trying to get more and more people to realize the power, whether you're in any other state or in California, is with your state organization. And to that effect, I need to point out, California Rifle Pistol Association is not the California branch of the NRA, never has been in our almost 150 years. Each state organization was responsible for keeping matches together so that people could go and compete at NRA-sanctioned national championships. But because of that communication, there was synergy politically so that we were all working together. And that's part of what built the strength of the NRA up, and also Gun Owners of America and other groups, was because these state organizations have been doing it. But we've been the quiet, unsung, political force behind. And because of what's going on, we've had to come out and say, like in our case here in California, we've had to pick up a lot of the stuff that NRA was doing so NRA could redirect resources in the fight of its life that it's having right now.
But I think one of the things that the NRA's struggles have exposed is that we can't put all our eggs in one big national basket. It just doesn't make sense. And whether you like NRA or not, I would say that applies to any large centralized organization. It's a really big target for people to go after. And one of the things I did like about this article, and I'll put a link in the description if you'd like to read it, is he pointed out that when you're supporting strong state organizations throughout the country, that's 50 targets. And it's an awful lot more difficult to go after them than it is to take on the one big target, which the NRA has been for quite some time. And if you think for one moment that if they're successful in destroying the NRA, that GOA is not next, or that the Second Amendment Foundation isn't after that, or whatever, I think you're missing the boat here. It's not about just doing away with one organization. It's about crushing them all. So I think the more we diversify into state organizations, the less challenges we're going to face, because the harder it is to knock those down. You got to knock 50 of them down. And then you start looking at local chapters, like you said. Now, how many chapters you got in the state?
We got a little over 30 of them right now, but it's not just our chapters. As an example, what I was going to say was, we also are working with over 250 clubs up and down the state, almost 300 ranges up and down the state. 50 of the 58 sheriff's offices we have direct contact with are working with them. We're working with hundreds of trainers throughout the state. That is a network that built out. We're working with feds. In fact, just got done working with the Bureau of Land Management, and we're getting 4 public shooting areas reopened. So the public will be able to shoot on them come this fall and enjoy them, and they're going to be safer and more efficient, and there's not going to be any real restrictions on them. It's all those things that your state organization does, because we're looking at all the activities surrounding the Second Amendment with the 360 and the politicians that can influence that, and trying to make sure that that's a positive influence and not a negative one.
I don't want to dissuade you from, if you're supporting national organizations, I don't want to dissuade you from doing that. I'm a life member of GOA. I'm a life member of NRA. I'm a life member of the Second Amendment Foundation. I'm a media member of the National Shooting Sports Foundation. I support them all. But the first groups I support, honestly, and the ones I support the most, are my state organizations, because those are the ones that have the most effect on my having people actually represent me. And I think that's one of the things that this article really drove home to me, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to bring it up. Is there anything else we haven't talked about? We've been on for quite a while. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about?
We're coming into the summer months in the fall, and this is the time of the year where organizations like ours, local clubs, try to put on events, whether they be youth shoots, fundraising events for wounded warriors and veterans, helping battered women learn how to defend themselves and shoot. And we've worked with trainers and different people that have your capabilities, Joel, up and down the state. And our barrier now is ammunition, namely like 22, 9mm, 12 and 20 gauge are great examples. Limited numbers of 45 and 223, but really those first 4 are the biggies. And our challenge right now is NRA traditionally had warehouses of ammunition. Traditionally, manufacturers donated or severely discounted ammunition to make programs work. And now a lot of these programs just flat out don't have the ammunition. They're knocking on our door. We're trying to scrape up ammunition from whatever sources. When I get done with this call today, before I go handle a couple of personal things, I'm actually going to be driving about 80 miles to pick up some 22 ammo that is going to go straight through our ammo vendor license to another group. We're not collecting any money off of it. In fact, if anything, this is kind of a loss leader, but it's not a loss to us because it's going to a group that's going to put on an event for about 4,000 youth. But the one barrier is ammunition. So if in the heart of any of you people, you can contact us at contact@crpa.org, ask for me, Rick, and I'll reach back out to you, and we'll see what we can do to keep these kids, because that's the next generation, and this is part of the cancel culture. If they can keep those kids from shooting, them and their parents don't learn how safe this sport is and how vital it is to their freedoms.
Rick, is there anything else that we should chat about? I think we've covered just about everything.
You got to save something for a future show.
That's it. That's it. Next time we get together, we'll talk about what's going on at the state level. And then if you hear something going on about court packing or the whole national thing, please let me know.
I will.
And we'll have you back on. Have a great day.
You too. Take care.
Thank you very much for watching through the entire interview. I'm very grateful, as I said, for everything that you do. I hope this was an informative interview for you, and certainly as things change or events come up, we'll have others. In the meantime, wherever you go, whatever you do, stay safe.